I'm Eleanor, and I found out about my inheritance on a Tuesday afternoon, but not in the way you'd expect. I wasn't sitting in some lawyer's office or opening a heartfelt letter. Instead, I was standing in my parents' kitchen, my hands trembling as I held my mother's phone, staring at a text message that wasn't meant for my eyes. Sold Ellie's emerald ring today, got $32,500, perfect for Melissa's venue deposit, delete this message. My heart stopped. The text was from my dad. I'd only picked up my mom's phone to check the time while she was upstairs, and there it was. A notification that ended up changing my whole life. I always knew my grandmother loved me in a special way. When she visited our suburban Chicago home, she'd slip me an extra cookie with a wink or tell me stories about her childhood in rural Kentucky, while my sister Melissa was too busy with her friends to listen. "You have my spirit, Ellie," she'd say, tucking my hair behind my ear. "Always remember that." I remember sitting with her on the porch swing during one of her last visits, her hands clasped around mine, the emerald ring catching the last rays of sunset. "Eleanor, do you know why this ring means so much to me?" she'd asked. "Because it's beautiful?" I guessed, mesmerized by how the gem seemed to hold its own light. She chuckled softly. "Beauty fades, dear. This ring has been worn by the women in our family who forge their own paths. My great-grandmother Catherine bought it herself in 1898, at a time when women weren't supposed to have their own money or make their own decisions. She wore it as a reminder that she belonged to herself first." Her eyes had grown distant then, remembering. "When your grandfather proposed to me, I told him I'd only accept if he understood this ring would never be replaced by a diamond. Some traditions are worth keeping." What I didn't know then was that she'd left her antique emerald ring to me. I couldn't breathe. My grandmother had died 8 months ago, and no one had said a word to me about any ring. Now it was gone forever, sold without my knowledge to fund my perfect sister's perfect wedding. "Mom," I called out appalled, my voice cracking. "Can you come down here, please?" When she entered the kitchen and saw her phone in my hand, her expression shifted from confusion to horrified realization in seconds. "Ellie, I can explain." I cut her off, asking, "Was that really Grandma's ring that you sold? Did she leave it to me?" Already knowing the answer. My mother's silence confirmed everything. She finally sighed and sat down at the kitchen island. "Your grandmother mentioned in her will that she wanted you to have her emerald ring when you turned 25. But Melissa's wedding venue needed a substantial deposit, and with your father's business struggling. So you just took it, without even telling me?" I felt sick. I was 23, just 2 years away from when I should have received it. "We were going to replace it, Ellie, with a nice modern one that's more your style," she said, not meeting my eyes. "More my style? You have no idea what my style is," I snapped, tears stinging my eyes. "That ring was a family heirloom. It was irreplaceable." "Eleanor," my mother said, her voice taking on that condescending tone she always used when she thought I was being dramatic. "It was just sitting in a safety deposit box. It's not like you were wearing it." "Because I didn't even know it existed." My voice rose despite my effort to contain it. "You never told me Grandma left me anything." "We didn't want to complicate things," she said, her fingers nervously tapping against the countertop. "The will is still in probate and—" "Don't lie to me," I cut her off. "If it's in probate, how did you sell the ring?" Her face flushed. She'd been caught in her deception, and we both knew it. My mother's face hardened. "Melissa is getting married to Bradley Reynolds. Do you understand what this means for this family? His father owns half the commercial real estate in the city. This wedding needs to be perfect." Of course. My sister had always been the golden child. Homecoming queen, summa cum laude from Northwestern, and now engaged to Chicago real estate royalty. Meanwhile, I was the disappointment who had dropped out of business school to pursue photography, living in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and working 3 jobs to make ends meet. "You could have asked me," I whispered. "I would have understood." "Would you have? Really?" She raised an eyebrow. "Because you're not exactly being understanding right now." That night I called my dad, hoping for something, an apology, an explanation, something better than what my mother had offered. "Princess, it's complicated," he said, his voice tired through the phone. "The Reynolds expect a certain kind of wedding. This is important for Melissa's future." "What about my future? That ring was worth $32,500. And we'll make it up to you, I promise. But right now, can you please just be happy for your sister? The engagement party is this weekend, and we need everyone smiling." I hung up feeling hollow. They didn't even see what they had done wrong. In their minds, taking something that belonged to me was justified if it benefited their favorite daughter. I called my best friend Zoe afterward, my voice breaking as I told her what happened. "That's straight-up theft," she said, outrage clear in her voice. "They stole from you, Ellie. You could report them." "They're my parents," I said weakly. "Who stole something worth over $30,000 from you?" she shot back. "Look, I know you've spent your whole life making excuses for how they treat you compared to Queen Melissa, but this crosses a line." She was right. I'd spent years accepting the disparity in how my parents treated us. When Melissa needed a car for college, they bought her a new BMW. When I needed one, they co-signed a loan that I was still paying off. When Melissa wanted to study in Paris, they covered everything. When I wanted to take a photography course in New York, I had to work double shifts for 3 months to afford it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my grandmother, how she'd specifically wanted me to have that ring. I remembered sitting on her lap as a child, mesmerized by how the emerald caught the light as she moved her hands, telling me stories about the strong women in our family who had worn it before her. I should have known this would happen, I thought bitterly. Every major family decision had always revolved around Melissa. My high school graduation party had been rescheduled because it conflicted with her summer internship orientation. My college fund had mysteriously shrunk after Melissa decided to study abroad for an extra semester. But this was different. This wasn't just about favoritism. They had stolen from me. The next morning, I called in sick to both my jobs and drove to my grandmother's old house, now empty and waiting to be sold. I still had the key, and I needed to feel close to her. As I walked through the silent rooms, running my fingers over her furniture, I found myself in her study. I used to watch her write letters at the antique desk by the window. On a whim, I opened the bottom drawer where she kept her important papers. It was mostly empty now, but tucked in the back was a worn leather portfolio I'd never seen before. Inside were old photographs, letters, and a small notebook labeled Family History. I flipped through it, finding detailed notes about various heirlooms and their stories. And there, on page 17, was a section about the emerald ring. The emerald ring came to our family through Catherine Wells in 1898, when she used her own savings to purchase it as a symbol of her independence. It has been passed from mother to daughter for generations, always to the woman who most embodies Catherine's spirit of determination and self-reliance. My grandmother had chosen me, not because I was the oldest or the most successful, but because she saw something in me that reminded her of Catherine, and my parents had dismissed that choice without a second thought. I remembered a conversation with my grandmother just months before she passed. We were looking through old photo albums, and she'd paused on a picture of herself as a young woman, standing proudly in front of the small bookstore she'd owned before meeting my grandfather. "People always said I was foolish to open that store," she told me. "A woman running a business in the 1950s? My own parents thought I'd fail within a year." Her eyes had sparkled as she squeezed my hand. "But I was stubborn, just like you with your photography." "Dad says photography is a hobby, not a career," I'd admitted quietly. She'd scoffed at that. "Your father has always played it safe. Nothing wrong with that, but some of us need to forge our own paths. Promise me you'll keep following yours, Ellie, no matter what anyone says." I'd promised. And now, finding this portfolio, I felt like she was speaking to me again, reminding me of who I was meant to be. At the bottom of the portfolio was an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter from my grandmother, dated just weeks before she died. "My dearest Eleanor, by now you may have received my emerald ring. Wear it with pride, knowing that it represents not just our family's past, but your bright future. I've always admired your creative spirit and determination, even when others couldn't see its value. There is something else I wanted you to have, something I've kept separate from my will. In the safe behind my bedroom painting, the combination is your birthday, you'll find documents for shares in Reynolds Development Group, 25% ownership to be exact. Your grandfather was an early investor in Howard Reynolds' first project, before the company became what it is today. These shares are worth considerably more than any ring, but I didn't put them in my will because I wanted to see if your parents would honor my wishes about the emerald first. Consider this my test of their character, and my gift to you, regardless of the outcome. With all my love, Grandma Elizabeth. The letter continued on a second page I hadn't initially noticed. Eleanor, I've known for years that your parents favor your sister. I've tried to speak to them about it, but they either deny it or make excuses. I worry about what might happen after I'm gone, which is why I've taken extra precautions. If you're reading this letter, you've found my hidden portfolio, but if you hadn't, my attorney David Greenberg has instructions to contact you directly on your 25th birthday. He has copies of all these documents and will ensure you receive what's rightfully yours, regardless of what your parents might do. I've lived long enough to know that family can sometimes fail us, even when they love us. This isn't just about money or things, Eleanor. It's about making sure you have the freedom to build the life you want on your terms. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in having the courage to live authentically. I believe in you. My hand shook as I read the letter again. I rushed to her bedroom and moved the painting of Kentucky Hills. There was the safe, just as she'd described. I entered my birthday, and the door swung open. Inside was a folder containing stock certificates and legal documents confirming 25% ownership in Reynolds Development Group, the very company owned by my future brother-in-law's family. According to the most recent statement included, these shares were now worth approximately $1.7 million. I sat on my grandmother's bed, stunned. Did Bradley's family know about this? Did my parents? The documents indicated the shares had been transferred solely into my name 3 months before Grandma died. So they were already mine, no will needed. There was also a business card for David Greenberg, attorney at law, with a handwritten note. Call me when you're ready. My hand still shaking, I dialed the number. The receptionist put me through immediately when I gave my name. Eleanor Mitchell, a deep voice greeted me. I've been expecting your call, though I didn't anticipate hearing from you for another 2 years. You know who I am? I asked, surprised. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman and a valued client, he replied. She left very specific instructions regarding your inheritance. I assume you found the safe? Yes, I said, still processing everything. Mr. Greenberg, did my parents know about these shares? There was a pause. Your grandmother didn't want them to know. She was concerned about how they might react. She wanted to ensure the shares came directly to you, which is why we handled the transfer before her passing. Legally, they're already yours. And if I hadn't found the letter, if I hadn't called you, I would have contacted you on your 25th birthday as instructed. Your grandmother didn't leave anything to chance, Miss Mitchell. That's when it hit me. My grandmother had set up a test, and my parents had failed spectacularly. She wanted to see if they would respect her wishes about the ring before revealing the much more valuable inheritance. And now I held significant ownership in the very family business my sister was marrying into. Something inside me shifted. I carefully returned everything to the safe except the documents that were rightfully mine. Then I called my boss at the photography studio. Kate, I need to take the rest of the week off, and I want to talk to you about possibly buying into the business as a partner. You? A partner? She laughed, then realized I was serious. Ellie, that would take substantial capital. I know, let's meet tomorrow. The next day, Kate stared at me across her cluttered desk, her expression shifting from skepticism to shock as I explained my situation. Let me get this straight, she said, pushing her purple-framed glasses up her nose. You own a quarter of Reynolds Development Group? The Reynolds Development Group that's building half the luxury condos in Chicago? I nodded, trying to maintain my composure despite the surreal nature of our conversation. Holy shit, Ellie. She leaned back in her chair. What are you going to do, besides potentially becoming my business partner, which, by the way, I'm absolutely open to discussing? First, I'm going to my sister's engagement party this weekend, I said, a plan solidifying in my mind, and I'm going to give her a gift she'll never forget. Kate's eyes widened. You're not going to make a scene, are you? I smiled. I'm going to be perfectly civil, but I'm also going to reclaim my place in my family, on my terms. Over the next few days, I consulted with a financial advisor and an attorney. The shares were legitimate and completely mine. I also learned that the Reynolds family had been trying to consolidate ownership for years, buying out small shareholders whenever possible. Meanwhile, my sister's engagement party was approaching that weekend. I hadn't responded to any of my family's messages, which resulted in increasingly frustrated voicemails from my mother. Eleanor Grace Mitchell, this behavior is completely unacceptable. This weekend isn't about you. The Reynolds will be there along with everyone who matters in Chicago. Your sister needs our support, not your childish sulking. I listened to the voicemail 3 times, each time focusing on the condescension in her tone, the automatic assumption that my feelings didn't matter. It strengthened my resolve. "You sound determined," Mr. Greenberg said when I met with him to finalize the documents for the foundation. "Your grandmother would be proud." "I just want the truth to come out," I told him, "and for my family to finally see me." "Truth has a way of demanding attention," he replied with a small smile. "But are you prepared for the fallout? Family conflicts over money can get ugly." I thought about all the years of being overlooked, of having my dreams dismissed as impractical while my sister's every whim was indulged. "I think it's been ugly for a long time," I said. "I just didn't have the power to do anything about it." The day of the party, I went to the high-end department store where Melissa was registered and purchased the cheapest item on her list, a $20 bottle opener. I had it wrapped beautifully in the store's signature blue box with a large white bow. Then I stopped by my attorney's office to pick up the documents he had prepared. When I arrived at the Chicago Yacht Club where the engagement party was being held, heads turned. Instead of the casual sundress my mother had suggested I wear, I was in a sleek emerald green cocktail dress, the exact shade of the ring that should have been mine. I'd arranged my long brown hair in an elegant updo and applied makeup with a professional's precision. My photography clients often didn't recognize the woman who showed up for fancy events, versus the one who hid behind the camera in jeans and a t-shirt. "Eleanor, you look different," my mother said as I air-kissed her cheek. Her eyes darted nervously to where my father was chatting with a gray-haired man I recognized as Howard Reynolds, Bradley's father. "Thank you, Mother. Is that new?" I gestured to the diamond bracelet on her wrist, wondering if that was where some of my ring money had gone. She touched it self-consciously. "Your father gave it to me for our anniversary." How thoughtful of him. I should go congratulate Melissa. As I turned to walk away, she grabbed my arm. "Eleanor, please don't make a scene today. This connection with the Reynolds family is important." Her eyes were pleading, but also warning. Melissa deserves her special day. I gently removed her hand from my arm. "Don't worry, Mother. Everyone will get exactly what they deserve today." The color drained from her face slightly, but before she could respond, I moved toward the crowd, making my way to where my father stood with Howard Reynolds. "Eleanor," my father called out with forced joviality. "Come meet Howard. Howard, this is my younger daughter, Eleanor." "Pleasure," Howard said with the cursory glance busy men give to people they don't expect to remember. "You're the photographer, right?" "Among other things," I replied with a smile. "I'm actually very interested in business as well, particularly family businesses with complex ownership structures." Howard's attention sharpened slightly, his eyes reassessing me. "Is that so? Not many young people appreciate the nuances of private company governance." "Oh, I'm learning more every day," I said, enjoying the confusion on my father's face. "In fact, I'd love to chat with you more later about Reynolds Development Group. I've been following some of your projects with great interest." Before either man could respond, I excused myself, feeling my father's worried gaze follow me as I walked away. I made my way through the crowd, nodding politely at familiar faces. My sister was holding court near the champagne fountain, her large diamond engagement ring catching the light as she gestured animatedly. Bradley stood beside her, tall and conventionally handsome in that bland way of privileged men who've never heard the word no. "Ellie!" Melissa squealed when she saw me, performing sisterly affection for her audience. "I wasn't sure you'd make it. You've been so busy with your photography thing." "I wouldn't miss it," I smiled, handing her the beautifully wrapped box, a small engagement gift. "Thank you. We'll open it later with the others," she said, passing it to a friend who was collecting presents. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying just enough to make nearby conversations pause, "I'd really love for you to open mine now. It's special." Melissa looked annoyed but maintained her smile. "Well, if it means that much to you." She took the box back and untied the ribbon, lifting the lid to reveal the simple bottle opener. Her smile faltered. "Oh, thanks." "It's from your registry," I said innocently. "But that's not the real gift. This one is, and you'll love it." I handed her a sealed envelope from my clutch, with a big smile that was just as fake as hers. "Another gift? You shouldn't have," she said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. I could tell she was annoyed by the interruption to her perfect party, but too conscious of appearances to show it openly. "Oh, but I should have," I replied. "Family is everything, after all. Isn't that what Mom and Dad always say?" Melissa gave me a strange look before opening the envelope. I saw her eyes scan the first document, a letter. Confused, she then pulled out a certificate. As she read it, her perfectly made-up face drained of color, her expression shifting from confusion to shock as understanding dawned. "What is it, darling?" Bradley asked, peering over her shoulder. It's a donation," Melissa stammered. "Ellie has made a donation in our names." "How thoughtful," Bradley said, clearly relieved it wasn't something embarrassing. "Yes," I smiled. "A donation of my 25% ownership shares in Reynolds Development Group to establish a foundation for arts education in underprivileged communities. The Eleanor Mitchell Foundation will be officially announced next week, but I wanted my sister and future brother-in-law to be the first to know." "That's impossible," Bradley said, his polite mask slipping as he grabbed the certificate from Melissa's hands. "Our company is privately held." "Yes, primarily by your family," I agreed pleasantly. "But my grandfather was an early investor in your father's first project. Grandma inherited his shares and transferred them to me before she died." "I've never heard of this," Bradley insisted, his voice rising enough to draw more attention. "Perhaps you should ask your father," I suggested, gesturing to where Howard Reynolds now stood watching our exchange with growing concern. The silence that followed was absolute. Howard Reynolds pushed through the crowd to snatch the certificate from Melissa's limp hand. "This is impossible," he growled after scanning the document. "These shares were bought back years ago." "Actually, Mr. Reynolds, they weren't," I said calmly. "My grandfather held them until his death. Then my grandmother transferred them solely to me 3 months before she passed. I've verified everything with my attorneys. I now own 25% of your company. Or rather, the foundation does." "This is preposterous," Howard sputtered, his face reddening. "I bought out all minority shareholders in 2015. "Not my grandfather," I replied. "He declined your offer. I have the correspondence in which he stated the shares were a legacy for his granddaughter. He believed in long-term investments." Howard's eyes narrowed, reassessing me completely. "We need to discuss this privately." "Of course," I agreed. "My attorneys are available whenever you'd like, but the foundation paperwork has already been filed. It's a beautiful legacy, don't you think? Supporting arts education for underprivileged youth across Chicago. My grandmother would be so proud." I could see my parents rushing over, horror etched on their faces. My father looked like he might faint. "Eleanor, what have you done?" my mother hissed. I smiled. "I've honored Grandma's legacy in my own way. She left me something far more valuable than an emerald ring, though I would have cherished that too, had it not been sold without my knowledge." Howard Reynolds' face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Young lady, we need to discuss this privately, immediately." "Of course," I agreed pleasantly. "I've been hoping to discuss some of the Foundation's ideas for corporate responsibility and community investment. Did you know that arts education can improve academic performance by up to 37% in underserved communities?" The rest of the party was a blur of tense conversations and shocked whispers. My sister wouldn't look at me. My parents alternated between apologizing profusely to the Reynolds family and shooting daggers at me with their eyes. As I was leaving, Bradley cornered me near the coat check. "You need to undo this," he demanded, his perfect veneer cracking. "Do you have any idea what you've done? My father has been working for decades to keep the company private and family-controlled." I slipped into my coat. "It still is family-controlled. Just not exclusively your family. I'm going to be your sister-in-law after all." "This isn't funny, Eleanor. That company is our legacy." "And the emerald ring was mine," I said, my voice finally betraying some emotion. "But legacies can change hands, as I've recently learned." "Is that what this is about? Some old ring?" he sneered. "You're willing to compromise a multi-million-dollar company over a piece of jewelry?" I stared at him, seeing for the first time what my sister was really marrying into. Not just wealth, but the entitlement that came with it. "It's not about the ring, Bradley. It's about respect, about acknowledging that my grandmother made choices about her possessions that should have been honored, just like my choices about my shares should be respected." "You have no idea how to manage an ownership stake in a company like ours," he said dismissively. "I'm a quick learner," I replied. "And fortunately, unlike some things that were taken from me, these shares are already legally mine. No one can sell them without my permission." His jaw clenched. "Melissa said you were difficult, but I had no idea." I smiled. "Then you have a lot to learn about your future family, don't you?" In the weeks that followed, I received countless calls from my family and the Reynolds. My parents vacillated between rage and pleading. Melissa canceled our monthly sister brunches. Howard Reynolds offered to buy the shares for triple their market value. I declined, of course. "They're playing hardball now," my attorney informed me one afternoon. "Howard Reynolds is suggesting they might contest the validity of the share transfer." "On what grounds?" I asked, alarmed. "None that would hold up in court," he assured me. "Your grandmother was of sound mind and the transfer was properly executed, but they're hoping to intimidate you into selling." "What should I do?" "Nothing," he smiled. "Sometimes the best negotiation tactic is silence. Let them sweat." And sweat they did. My mother left daily voicemails that evolved from angry to desperate. "Eleanor, please call us back. The Reynolds are blaming us for this situation. Your father's business relationships are suffering. Please, just tell us what you want." What I wanted was acknowledgement, respect, to be seen as more than just the disappointing daughter who could be overlooked and dismissed. Instead, I used a small portion of the dividends to buy into the photography studio as a partner. The Eleanor Mitchell Foundation funded its first arts program in a Southside community center, and I personally taught a photography workshop for teenage girls. 6 months later, I received an unexpected package. Inside was my grandmother's emerald ring with a note from my father. "We found a way to get it back. I'm sorry, Princess." I later learned he had tracked down the buyer and paid nearly double what they'd sold it for. That evening I called my parents. My mother answered, her voice cautious. "You got the ring," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Thank you for finding it." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us before she spoke again. "We didn't understand what it meant to you. I thought things were just things." "Some things are more than objects," I said quietly. "They're connections to our past, to the people who loved us." "Like your grandmother," she acknowledged. "She always saw something special in you." For the first time in our relationship, I heard something like respect in her voice. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. The following week, I accepted a lunch invitation from Howard Reynolds. As we sat in his private club overlooking the Chicago skyline, he studied me with new respect. "You're nothing like what your parents described," he said finally. "And what was that?" "The unfocused daughter, the artistic one without business sense." He shook his head. "They couldn't have been more wrong." I sipped my water. "People often see what they expect to see." "Indeed." He straightened his tie. "The Foundation's initiatives have actually generated positive press for the company. Our social responsibility ratings are up, and we've attracted new investors who appreciate the community focus." "I'm glad to hear it." "I have a proposal," he said. "Not to buy your shares, as I know you'll decline, but to invite you to join our board. Your perspective could be valuable." I smiled, thinking of my grandmother. "I'd be happy to consider it, Mr. Reynolds." "Howard, please," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to the family business, Eleanor, though I suspect you're going to challenge our way of doing things." "Count on it," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. As we concluded our lunch, he asked, "Do you think your grandmother knew how this would all play out?" I thought about her letter, her secret safe, her backup plan with the attorney. "I think she knew exactly what she was doing," I said. "She was playing the long game." "Smart woman," Howard nodded. "I wish I'd known her." "So do I," said softly, "more than you can imagine." That evening, I sat in my new studio office, the emerald ring catching the light as I typed an email accepting the board position. My grandmother had been right. I did have her spirit. And now everyone else knew it too. Sometimes the worst gift you can give someone is the truth about themselves. My sister's perfect wedding went ahead as planned 3 months later. I attended, wearing my grandmother's ring and sitting on the groom's side as a newly appointed board member of his family's company. "You look different," Melissa said when she found me at the reception. Her white dress was everything she'd dreamed of. Designer label, custom beading, perfect in every way. Yet somehow, she seemed smaller than before. "I feel different," I admitted. "A lot has changed." She fingered her champagne glass nervously. "I didn't know about the ring, Ellie. Not until after. I would never have." "Wouldn't you?" I asked, not unkindly. "You've always taken your place at the center of our family for granted." She flinched but didn't argue. "I'm sorry, for everything." For the first time in years, I saw my sister instead of the golden child. Just a woman who had been shaped by the same family dynamics that had nearly crushed me. "I know," I said. "I hope you'll be happy, Melissa. I really do." When Melissa saw me there, the look on her face was worth every moment of struggle. I smiled and raised my champagne glass in a silent toast, the emerald glinting in the light. Some inheritances, it turns out, are worth more than their price tag. Hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please click the like button, then click the big subscribe and like buttons to see more great stories as we publish them. Also add your comments below. Thanks.